Hi, everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 924 support tier list. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the rest of the content as well. I stream every night starting around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. Come on out. It's a great time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or just chat with you about League or Total War or anything else you'd like to chat about. I try to be as interactive as possible with the chat, explain what I'm doing, but also try to be very conversational while I'm playing. So it's a good time, wonderful community. Come by, check that out, and check out the rest of the content as well. I'm gonna have an ADC tier list and at least a couple of the other roles as well. And then we have individual champion guides, coaching sessions, topical guides, all sorts of stuff on the channel, and we're constantly adding more. So be sure to check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Now, sorry, first of all, I do still have a cold that I've had for like a month now. I've got a drink here. Hopefully I won't be coughing too much. And I do look a little bit more blue than usual. My wife is working on a backsplash in the kitchen, and she needed the lamp because she had to disconnect the electricity to a couple of sockets. But anyways, that's why I look a little bit more blue than usual, because I don't have the light to cancel out the screen color as much. But anyways, let's go ahead and get in here. So real quickly, I just wanted to hit the... I think that's actually stronger. I just wanted to hit the highlights here real quick of what's changed in the meta, because I get asked about this constantly on the stream, just maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then go into the support tier list itself. This does have to be limited to maybe 30 or 45 minutes because I have to go to a meeting on campus for teaching, but anyways, let's go ahead and get in here. So, and I will have timestamps in the description so you can jump around to your favorite parts. And in this big Google Doc, which will also be linked in the description, you can find these mini Google Docs as well, and each one of these is going to link you to recommended runes, items, and a 1 to 5 system for 5 different skills that a support or to look at in terms of measuring supports in the lane. So lane pressure is how likely can they get priority in the lane. Kill threat, how likely are they to be able to force kills. Safety, how safe is a champ, particularly from ganks in the early game. Scaling is how well does a champ perform over time. And reliability is how likely is it that someone can perform on a high level on this champion over multiple games. So part of that is how difficult is a champion to play in terms of mechanics and decisions, but also how well is the champion fit into the meta. Are there a lot of counters out there? Does the champion work well with a lot of allies that you might have? Okay. So there have been a lot of things that I think have very heavily favored supports, most specifically enchanter supports during the preseason. This stuff doesn't get talked about a lot. That I've noticed by a lot of other content creators. Some people actually think that support has been nerfed in the preseason. I think there are certain supports that have been nerfed that were oppressing other supports, mostly Nautilus and Leona. But I think that in general, those champions are still viable. There are just other champions that are able to flourish now under some of these new circumstances. So what are these circumstances? Why do I think enchanters are so strong? Well, first of all, there are no on-hit procs anymore on the support items. That means there's no damage on hit. Most importantly, there's no sustain on hit from Relic Shield. So the champions that are going to be hit the most by this are Leona and Nautilus, because neither one of them has any sustain inherent in their kit, and their itemization doesn't allow them to get sustain typically. So like Zeke's, for example, doesn't have any health regen on it. Knight's Vow doesn't have any health regen. So they can go for like a Righteous Glory, and that will have health regen, but it's a little bit more expensive, and it's still not very common on those champs. So that just means that, you know, you're going to effectively have, I haven't done the exact math on it, but you're going to have at least a couple hundred less effective health in the laning phase because you're not going to have that sustain over something like a 3 or 4 minute period. So that's a big deal. And then poke champions like Zyra, they could poke really well, and even to a lesser extent, Sona and Nami are going to be hurt by the lack of the on-hit damage. People that can trade really consistently on a low cooldown are going to be hurt a little bit by the lack of the Frostfang. So enchanters are still fine with that, though, because they scale. They don't need to do anything fancy in the early game. If you're like Soraka or Janna, you just outscale everybody. And I'll talk about the scaling and how that works here in just a little bit when we talk about the top of the tier list. But enchanters are okay with that. They're fine with going even in the lane most of the time, or even just having some light harassment. So no regen, so mention that. There's no mana regen as well. So, you know, at first that looks like that hurts enchanters, but really it doesn't, because all of their items have a ton of fairy charms. So, you know, you're going to have 2 fairy charms in every forbidden idol. You're going to have 2 fairy charms in any chalice that you get. So whether you start off with Athenes, Ardent, Redemption, Mikhails, whatever you start as an enchanter, you're going to have a lot of fairy charms. And typically enchanters like Soraka and Janna, kind of the pure enchanters, are going to have about 12 mana per 5 anyways. So they get really big scaling on those fairy charms versus, like some mages might only have like 8 mana per 5, which means the fairy charms would do a lot less for them. Zyra, for some reason, has really high. I don't remember what it is. It used to be like 15 mana per 5. Just randomly, they gave that to her last year. But I think they lowered it to like 10 or 12, something like that. But a lot of other mages are going to be a lot lower than that, like Brand. There's no cooldown reduction on the tier 2 items now. So this mostly hurts AP and enchanters because the old Targon's Brace for the tanks didn't have it anyways. So you're going to have to find your CDR elsewhere. But enchanters can now itemize into Ionian boots and probably be okay with that to get the CDR versus a lot of those hard engaged tanks, the Leona, Nautilus, Thresh, Pike, all that stuff. They really need mobility boots so they can roam and make plays. So they're never going to be able to make up for that CDR that they were able to get with the upgraded Targon's Brace. I forgot what it's called offhand, but the tier 3 Targon's Brace item. So, at tier 3, that's going to be a nerf for them. Now, this is exactly what I predicted, and I think that's still true for the preseason. Now, this one was a little different. I thought that Relic Shield was going to be really weak in the preseason, but I was wrong about that. I was thinking, well, it's going to be, 45 seconds for a charge, so that's going to suck. But the thing is, you can hold 3 charges at the baseline Relic Shield. So, just with your Tier 1 Relic Shield, you can still hold 3 charges. Beforehand, you could only hold 2 charges. And it's just so much easier to proc it, especially for ranged champions, that you almost always have this thing, like, 500 gold stacked, and you have your wards by, like, 10 minutes almost every game, regardless of if you're getting completely smashed in the lane. As long as you get those cannon minions, which is easier to do with ranged champs, then it's still good. So tanks will obviously still want this item, but I would recommend getting the Relic Shield on pretty much everybody. Like, the bottom line is, with the new Relic Shield that has the AP on it, at the end of the day, when it's fully stacked, when you get to tier 3, yes, you're going to have a little bit less health. I think it's something like you lose 20 AP, but you get 150 health. So yes, like 20-25 minutes in the game, would you rather have a fully stacked Frostfang or a fully stacked Relic Shield? Yeah, you'd rather have the Frostfang. But in the early game, like, if it comes down to, would you rather have your wards at 10 minutes, or would you rather have your wards at 12, 13, maybe even 15 or 16 minutes? If you get zoned out of Frostfang stacks, I would rather take the consistent wards at 10 minutes. Also, having that health is more valuable than AP in the early game, I think. It really protects you against all ends. Enchanters are going to scale well anyways, so having that extra health in the early game, getting 50 more health and sacrificing 2 or 3 AP, I think is a really good deal. Also, one other thing is that your 80 carries can't miss cannon minions anymore, and this sounds kind of flamey, but it's not. It honestly happens all the time. Even in, like, low diamond, people just miss cannon minions all the time. So being able to hit that for them with the relic proc, just make sure that you're going to get the gold and they're going to get the gold. So, in any given game, if they missed, during the laning phase, like 3 cannons, that's almost 200 gold worth of value that you're giving them that they may have missed anyways. So that's just a little bit of extra gold. But yeah, it's great. It allows you to survive the all-ins against things like Nautilus, against things like Leona if you're playing an enchanter. You get your guaranteed wards. You also definitely get the tier 3 way, way faster, like 18 to 20 minutes, almost regardless of how much you're getting stomped in lane, if that happens. If you're winning, obviously it's going to stack fast, but even if you're behind, it still stacks. Versus the Frostfang in that mid-game, like, sometimes you're just roaming around, positioning, and you just can't use those stacks on time, So sometimes it may take like 25 minutes for you to get your tier 3. So I just think that Relic Shield is really, really good right now. I'd run it on basically everybody. I mean, I've even tried stacking it on, like, Sona using Frostfang versus stacking it, like, using Relic Shield. And the Relic Shield still was a little bit better. Believe it or not, Sona's one of the best. You just walk up and press Q in 800 range and it gives you Relic stacks. or gives you Frostfang stacks. But anyway, so I think Relic Shield's really, really good on basically everybody. You can't buy a forward item early, but you get it fairly. The thing is, like, a lot of pro-level tanks, you know, pros that are playing like Tom, Braum, Nautilus, things like that, they rush the forward item as fast as possible. It's usually like boots plus forward item. But even then, like, I guess it's not that bad because you would probably complete it by, you know, maybe 15 minutes versus this, you know, just with farming the Relic Shield item, you're going to get it in like 17 minutes. So it's not really that big of a deal. Kind of now that I'm thinking about it a bit more. But if you are ahead and you got a lot of money and you're trying to buy that vision as fast as possible, it will be a little bit slower. But that doesn't apply to most people that are watching these games. I assume they're watching these videos. I assume there aren't many pros watching my tier list. So you get a huge gold boost in the early game. This very heavily favors enchanters. We'll talk about that here in a second with itemization. But it very, very heavily favors enchanters, because once enchanters get like 2 complete items, then it's pretty much lights out against most engage. Like, you're not going to have enough power oftentimes to cut through the Janna or the Soraka once they get 2 of their big ticket items, once they get like some combination of Ardent, Redemption, Mikhail's, Athene's. Once they get 2 of those, it's going to be really, really hard to burst through that. So that means you have a much, much lower window to dominate with the engaged champs. Top and jungle tanks are back. So like Warwick, Nunu, Zac, Mundo have all been doing very well. Olaf is tank-ish. He's kind of like an early game bruiser, but he does convert over to tanks, and he often takes Spirit Visage. All of these often take Spirit Visage, and that is really, really OP with Soraka. It gives 30% extra healing from Soraka and from their innate healing that they have in their kits. So that's really, really nice. And then the Conqueror was nerfed. It got nerfed again on this patch. It was nerfed last patch, so that means that tanks are going to be a little bit better. And then Aftershock is a buff for tanks who get a lot of resistances. It's a nerf for supports. Some people are calling it a buff for supports. I don't know how you could say that, because it does, like, at level 3, you know, it gives like half the resistances and does like half the damage that it used to for like a Leona level 3 all-in. It's a nerf. Yes, you can all-in more often. You know, you can all-in every 20 seconds instead of every 40. But you don't want to all-in often for light trades, because you don't have sustain. You don't have the Relic Shield procs anymore. You don't have any innate healing in your kit. Like, you don't want to be doing that with like Soraka. You don't want to just pop in for a second and do, you know, 200 damage, trade 200 with them, because they're going to heal it up and you're not. You know, all-in champs want to go all in and kill the person right there. That's it. All in to the death. They do not want light trades on like Leona and Nautilus. So I think that's a really big nerf. But because of these tanks coming back into the meta, it makes enchanters perform a lot better because of how they scale with resistances. If you don't know how this works, basically, if someone has 100 armor or if someone has 1,000 health, let's say, and they have no armor, no magic resist, it takes 100 physical damage to kill that person, right? But if they have 100 armor, then it's going to take 2,000 physical damage to kill that person. Okay, that's how armor works. Every 1 point of armor that you have means it takes 1% more physical damage to kill the person. The same is true with magic resist. That's the easiest way to think about it. Every point of magic resist someone has means it's going to take 1% more of that type of damage to kill them from 100 to 0. So if someone has 50 magic resist, it's going to take 50% more magic damage to kill them. 100 armor, 100% more physical damage to kill them. Shields are affected by resistances. So if Janna gives somebody a 300 shield and they have 100 armor, it's going to take 600 physical damage to break that shield. If they have 200 armor, it's going to take 900 damage to break that shield. So that's why things like Janna are very, very good when tanks are in the meta, because they have resistances. Because if you're shielding, you know, a Zac who's going to have 150 armor, you know, maybe in the late game against a bunch of AD, that's going to be a lot more effective than if you're shielding a Kha'Zix who might have like 60 armor. And the same is true with healing. If you just flat give them the heal, it's the same effect. It's going to take, you know, if you heal them for 200 and they have 100 armor, it's going to take 400 physical damage to counteract that heal that you gave them. The heal kind of makes sense because that's just health you're giving him. But the shield is something a lot of people forget about or don't understand that shields. Because in some games, you know, basically everything does true damage to shields. But not in League of Legends. In League of Legends, the armor counts. Okay. Dragons are a high priority, so you want something that can push and contest for dragons. This is something that's kind of come true, but not all the way. You know, I predicted that push and poke with Energizer builds were going to be really strong as far as ADC, so you wanted champs that could push, get priority, and poke. But it's not that far off. Like, it's still pretty accurate. Like, Senna was one who has like almost a 57% win rate. Misfortune doesn't use the Energizer stuff, but it's still kind of like early game bully. You got some just weird mages mixed in there. Ashe doesn't use Energizer, but still pretty good. And then Jhin is still going to be good. Caitlyn's pretty good and popular. So, it's definitely a push meta. And a lot of them are going to use the Energizer builds like the Storm Razor Rush into like either Rapid Fire Cannon or Infinity Edge. It's those three items. The order can get mixed up a little bit. So that means there's going to be less sustain against poke, less Blazer and King users typically. Less ganks early because junglers are going to be a little bit weaker early on. High priority on dragons. So anything that can push, poke, sustain, take small trades, get advantages is going to be big. Then, yeah, the Aftershock I talked about is a nerf for Nautilus and Leona. Shorelia, new item, can be decent on situational situations, I guess, for some terrible verbiage there. But in certain situations, it's good. Okay, now it's rare, but like against Olaf, for example, who's very popular and extremely strong right now, Shorelia as an enchanter can be a really good way to try to deal with him. Because you can't CC him, like your only option is to run and try to kite him. And so giving your team that kind of movement speed to spread out might be enough to save him. It's still going to be tough if he's fed, but that'll give you a better chance than a lot of stuff. Now, Presence of Mind was nerfed, so champions like Nautilus and Leona, this is specifically going to hurt because they were really good with using that rune to get more ultimates up to make more plays. But now you can substitute it with Ulti Hunter, which is close. You know, if you're only getting like 2 kills and assists per ult, then it's actually an advantage, Ulti Hunter. If you're getting 3 or more, then the old Presence of Mind was probably an advantage. However, you also get the Ghost Poro, which is awesome. It gives like 30 AP at about 15 minutes into the game, and it gives you some extra vision early on to help you protect Dragon. So it's really, really good, but it's obviously going to be way better for champions that scale with AP. So that's going to be Enchanter. So, you know, things like Leona and Nautilus can get it, but it's not really going to help them out that much. Okay, well, now that we spent like half of our time, you know, going through the meta, let's talk about the tier list over here. So, what's changed since last time? Well, Soraka's still really good. I'm not going to go through everything on her. I'll try to keep it relatively brief on Soraka, but I get asked about her all the time. My build is a little bit different from a lot of other people out there. But what makes Soraka really strong is, number one, she has really low mana cost. So you can spam your harassment in the lane, and it's damage and heals you at the same time. So you can spam this in the lane. You don't have to worry about not having that early mana regen that might be missing from Frostfang. You're going to get Fairy Charms anyways. And it's just extremely cost efficient. I mean, for 40 cost, you can do 75 damage, heal yourself for 60, and potentially heal an ally for 60. So if you get 2 points of this in the laning phase, it's 45 for 110 damage and 80 heal. It's just super, super efficient. And things that people forget about this is it actually speeds you up pretty significantly. 20% movement speed, and it gives your ally 20% movement speed for 5 seconds. Now, that does fall off. They don't get the entire movement speed for the whole time. But for the first couple of seconds, like, it's a pretty good little burst of speed akin to something like a Nami or a Karma. So people forget about that. But it's really good, nice for trading. It can also wave clear and push. So if you're trying to get priority to get a Scuttle or a Dragon or something, or you just need a really good back timing, you can push with this. Hit the back line, just set it up for Caitlyn to Q it, Jhin to grenade it, or whatever. She actually has pretty decent wave clear early on. Or at least she can set it up for your ADC to clear it pretty quickly. And then the heal. I mean, this thing is so, so strong. This, like, scales through the roof power on this thing. Because it's a 2-second cooldown. Which is ridiculous. a 200 heal on a 2-second cooldown. Most of the other enchanters, their cooldowns are going to be like 8 to 10 seconds. So she can cast like 4 of these in that amount of time. Right? So she can do like a total of 800 healing by the time like Janna is able to shield one more time. So it's just nutty. And the thing is, if you hit this Q, it's going to improve it, you know, by an additional like 100 if you have 3 points in Q. You know, in the mid game, it's going to improve it by an extra 100. So it's basically like a 300 heal on everybody. It's just an insane amount of burst healing you can put on a single target. And you combine that with your ult, which, you know, can heal upwards of like 400 at level 11. It's just like a crazy amount of healing. I mean, this thing, when they're below 40% and you have like, you know, 20 or 30% plus healing and shielding, you've got Revitalize. I mean, it'll take somebody almost from like 30% to full. Like, no joke, a squishy champ just like gets full up off of that thing. And if they have a Spirit Massage, you know, forget about it. It's just like, it's insane. So she just has really, really good, like, insane healing. If they don't shut you up really early in the fight, you win the fight. Like, hands down, if they do not kill you right away, you're going to win. Like, they have to kill somebody immediately, because if you start getting these heals off, it's going to be over. Like, no one can keep up with that. Because remember, if you're healing somebody with 100 armor, this is the equivalent of doing 400 damage. Like, just imagine if and I get asked, how do you carry a Soraka? Imagine this. Just put on your imagination cap here. Imagine if there was someone like an assassin or something that was ranged, or like an AD carry that had an ability that was ranged. It was 550 range on a 2-second cooldown, and it did 400 damage every 2 seconds. Just think about that for a second. Think of how OP that would be. If it's just like a talent or something, and he has an ability that's just like every 2 seconds at 550 range, point click, boom, 400 damage, 400 damage, 400 damage, 400 damage every 2 seconds. You say, what the hell, that champion's OP. That's what Soraka does, because it takes 400 damage to counteract this 200 heal that she gives. And it has insane scaling. What if there was an item that said you do 20% more damage for 2,100 gold, and it had a bunch of other stuff too? It's a Quicksilver Sash combined with you do 20% more total damage. It's like a death cap and a Quicksilver Sash. A little mini death cap. That's what Mikhail's is on Soraka. So that's what people need to wrap their head around, that's like difficult to understand, is that like, that's what it is with Soraka. That's how you hard carry. Like, you don't have to be able to make plays, because no one's going to die once you get a couple of items. You know, when you frame it like that, it sounds ridiculous when you look at the damage end of it. But that's basically what it is. It's two sides of the same coin. Like, you're preventing damage. But if no one on your team dies, you're going to win the fight. So, it's very, very similar. And then the silence is like, it's good situationally. It's not as, the CC is not as strong as a lot of other champs out there. But just think of her like, it's almost like an assassin that's an enchanter. It's just like the burst damage that's really healing is just insane off of her. So she doesn't have a lot of utility. But that's really good. Also, this ult is global at all times. So you can influence a fight top lane, you know, just give someone half of their health bar back in the middle of a fight, and you can totally, like, swing an entire lane. You know, if it's a topside fight, one of those snowbally, you know, top laners, you can totally swing the fight. So it's like a Karthus ult, right? Like, you can roam without even roaming. That's what made Jungle Karthus so strong, is that he could just sit there and power farm without roaming. Well, you can just sit there in lane and protect your AD carry and be getting all that experience without risking a roam a lot of times, because now you can still roam. You know, if there's a fight going on and you want to show up, you can still try to do that. But you can just press R and influence the whole map. It also makes it very easy to stack Ulti Hunter, because you can get assists all across the map really early in the game. Wind Dragons are also insane on her. Like, the cooldown on this gets pretty low. If you get like a Wind Dragon, you have Ulti Hunter fully stacked, you get like 30% CDR in the mid game. You know, you can get this thing under 100 seconds. I've seen it as low as like 45 seconds. That was when I had like 3 wins plus Ulti Hunter and like 40% CDR. I think it was like 30 seconds or something. It was ridiculous. But yeah, so she's very, very good with that. So anyways, that's Soraka. That's why she's strong. She's just the raw, pure, like, just raw power scaling. She's the highest scaling support in the game because of those insane heals. Now, And, you might be thinking, oh, well, what if someone gets grievous wounds? Well, that's annoying, but still, instead of doing like a point click, you do 400 damage every 2 seconds, it's a point click, you do 200 damage every 2 seconds. It's still pretty good. But, anyways. And they may not have grievous wounds always applied to everybody either. Like, we just kind of assume, oh, one champion on the enemy team has grievous wounds. It may not be on everybody. And executioners only last for 3 seconds. So if someone's like running away and they're out of combat for 3 seconds, you just wait until that debuff falls off and you just heal them back to full and they can turn around and run back in. Okay. Anyways, so the build that I like on her is Guardian, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, Ghost Poro, Ultimate Hunter. So the theme is don't die. Like, that's it with Soraka. If you don't die, you win the game. Okay? So you want to take Barrier on her. That's what a lot of people have been taking for a long time. It's on a lower cooldown than Exhaust. And if someone just up front, like, spikes you with 1,000 damage, let's say you have 1,000 health, and someone just, like, runs in, I don't know, Zed comes up to you, and maybe Zed's not a great example. Maybe, like, I don't know, a Hecarim runs at you or something like that, runs you over for a lot of damage before you can really exhaust too much out of him, or a Rengar jumps out of a bush, or a Kha'Zix jumps over a wall. Maybe they knock off half your health immediately before you even know what's going on. Now you're at 500 health. If you press exhaust on that, the exhaust is only going to help you out for the remaining 500 health that you have. So it's going to be a lot less effective. Versus Barrier always gives you full value. It doesn't matter if you pop Barrier at 5% health or 100% health. You're still getting the full shield out of it. Barrier also scales with plus healing and shielding. So when you get, when you have Revitalize and when you have like 30% plus healing and shielding off your items, that's going to help your Barrier out a lot. It's on a lower cooldown, like I mentioned, and it blocks true damage. This is really important because Ignite is true damage, so your Exhaust does not prevent Ignite at all. Ignite will do 100% damage through Exhaust. The same is true of things like Olaf Strikes, Cho'Gath Bites, anything else that's doing true damage in the game, Garen ults, all that stuff is going to kill you. Exhaust is not going to help you. It does help. Barrier does stop that, though. And Barrier can block ranged things. I mean, if Jhin is just about to, he's got his rapid fire all charged up, he's got his 4th shot, and he's going to, like, flash on you and try to, like, auto-attack you to death, you may not be able to get close enough to exhaust him. But if you have Barrier, you can block it. Or, like, Lux is going to laser you. Or Senna is going to ult you and kill you. You can use the Barrier to help you out with that. So, I just think Barrier is way, way better on Soraka. Now, you might think, well, you can't protect your AD carry with Barrier, but you can with Exhaust. That's true, but remember, if you don't die, it's highly, highly unlikely they're going to die, because you're going to be able to heal them through most things, if you can just stay alive. Like, you can pop your ult to burst heal them, you can drop a Redemption on them, you can drop a Silence to shut up the person who's on them for a couple of seconds in time for you to, like, spam a couple of heals on them. It's really, really hard to kill people if Soraka's sitting there, unimpeded. Font of Life is okay. I mean, you can take Demolish if you think you're going to push a lot, but this does help you if you want to get something like Ardent Censer. It does help you spread that out to everybody else a little bit more. It doesn't really matter too much. Nothing on that tree is that great in that row. That's okay. Conditioning is great. At 10 minutes, it gives you like 500 or 600 gold worth of resistances. You can take Bone Plating, which is okay in the early game, but it falls off really hard later. And it's really easy to pop early. Like the AD carry just auto attacks you once, and now it's on cooldown for 45 seconds during the laning phase. So I think it's a little lackluster. I mean, if you're against a really hard all-in lane and you're scared, like, maybe you can do it. But I think that conditioning is going to give you much, much more value as the game goes on, because it's always up, and it's going to ultimately prevent a lot more damage. And conditioning affects your shields, so it also affects your Guardian proc, and it affects your Barrier as well. And speaking of Guardian, and Revitalize, you have to have Revitalize. It's OP. It's so much extra healing on Soraka. You have to have that. And then Ghost Poro is for the 30 extra AP, around 15 to 20 minutes. Also gives you better vision to protect dragons, scuttles, things like that in the mid game. And then Ulti Hunter gives you a lot of CDR for your ult, which is one of the most powerful ults in the whole game. So why this build over Aerie? The thing is, with Guardian, it protects you. It protects your AD carry. It gives them a burst amount of shield, and it gives you movement speed and them movement speed. But the big thing is it protects you also. Aerie never protects you. It can never shield you. So Guardian, is much, much more important, I think. And yes, you are giving up early pressure, but in this meta right now, like, pressuring is good. Getting some extra poke in with Aerie is good. But I really think that, being strong in the mid game, whenever you get your first couple of items, whenever you start contesting dragons and things like that, Guardian's just going to be stronger. Just look at the stats at the end of the game on Guardian. Just play a game with Guardian. Just look at it. It's going to block like 2,000 or 3,000 damage in the game. And that movement speed is clutch as well. It's really big. So, like, basically, I did the math before in a video. You pretty much, in a fight, in order to match the Guardian shield, assuming that both people take full damage of it, you would have to get off like 4 Aerie shields in a fight. So it has to be a long fight. And you have to always get the shield version. If you auto-attack somebody when Aerie's standing next to you, it's just going to do a dinky amount of damage to them at 20 minutes in. It's not going to do anything. You have to get the shield, which means you have to really be focused and not auto-attack, not Q, not do damage to people whenever Aerie's just about to get back to you, so you can do another heal. So it requires a lot of extra micromanagement, watching that Aerie, and I know for a lot of people I know for me personally, that would be really hard to do with all the other effects. You're tracking cooldowns, you're trying to position right, all this other crap's going on, and you're trying to watch where Aerie is at the same time. This little small, like, glowing dot on the screen. It's a lot of micro to do it correctly. And as I mentioned before with Soraka, if the fight goes long, you win. Like, that's it. If they don't kill you, like, in the first 3 seconds and you get off your spells, you're going to win the fight. So I would much, much rather have upfront burst shielding to protect me personally and the AD carry than... Even if the fight goes to like 15 or 20 seconds, maybe even if I get off the 4 Aeries, I'd still rather have Guardian, because in that situation, I'm winning anyways. It's just overkill, right? Because if I'm getting off a lot of heals, we're already winning. So, and I would also go Ionian Boots, just because you can't get your CDR from your item anymore. It's fine. You don't need to roam with Mobies anyways. With Soraka, you have your ult for the roaming. And then I would go with the Relic Shield. And I've been doing... Mikhail's a lot more lately, too. Okay. We got maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So I said I was not going to talk about Soraka, and then boom, I talk about Soraka a lot. But I do get asked about her a lot on stream. Just go watch my stream over the last few weeks. I've climbed from... I think I started the preseason. It was rough. It was really rough in the preseason. But we were like P4 at the end of the... At the end of the regular season. We got as high as D4 during the regular season, but I just did not do very well in the back half of the season, honestly. Like, I just didn't do well in, like, the Leona Nautilus meta. But in this preseason, I've been cranking it. We're back up to Platinum 1. We're knocking on the door of D4 in just, like, a couple of weeks since some of these changes. So, I think Enchanters are definitely back in a big way. Okay. What was that? Okay. Anyways, let's talk about the other ones. So Rakan, I've talked about Rakan a lot in the past. Anyone that's watched, any of my stuff in season 9 knows that Rakan's strong. He's just one of the most reliable engagers in the game. He has a really big shield, so he actually does quite well with the enchanter items. So he's just a great hybrid of an all-in engage that also has a shield. He can get out, if it's kind of a tough fight, or you just need to get out of there, or just like reposition, he can do that with Battle Dance and Grand Entrance. He's the most mobile support. He's great at making plays, and the shield is really big. Don't forget you can do this twice. So it has a 1.6 ratio with a 280 base. That's really high. Janna, I think, has a 220 shield, maybe 230, with a 0.7 base. So his is way higher, and it basically comes with 2 semi-flashes. So just really strong. So he scales well, and he's just versatile. Like, if they have 80 assassins, you need to be able to tank here. Great, you can go Zeke's, you can go Knight's Vow. You want to be a little bit more aggressive, you can go Ardent Censor. You want to be teamfight oriented, you can go Redemption. You want even more engage and the ability to rotate faster, you can go for something like a Righteous Glory. There's so many different items you can get on him and be effective. Anyone that doesn't have him, like, tier 1 or tier 2 is trolling. That makes a tier list. Like, there's a reason this guy has, like, 2 world skins, possibly a third one. He very easily could if the winning team, FPX, I think was... I'm blanking on their initials. But if they decide to pick him, they definitely could. He's just that good. He's really, really strong. Not just in pro play, but he's just good all over the place. Now, I would take... I need to update these runes. I'll do that before I post this up. But I would take Revitalize, and then Conditioning, and then I would rotate down into Ghost Poro and Ulti Hunter. And then you just want Relic Shield or Ionian Boots. And Relic Shield. So, really good engage. Excellent if you need to hard engage on the Soraka to kill her, or the Janna, or they have Jinx. If you need hard engage, he's your support. You can still do Nautilus. The difference between Nautilus and Rakan is that Rakan has the shield that scales really hard, and he has the option of getting things like Ardent Sensor, like Redemption, and I just think that positions him a lot better. He just scales way better than Rakan does. So, yeah, he's going to be pretty strong. Janna's been coming up quick. Now, she's been pretty good for a while, and the thing is, she's one of the better picks into those hard engage supports, because, like, her win rate's 50, almost 54%. Soraka's, like, 53, 53.5. It's kind of moving up. But if you look at the pick right here, a lot of people are still picking the hard engage because everyone thinks this is how you have to hard carry, because that's just what all of the other content creators say. The big names that, like, don't play support a lot, usually. They're just looking at statistics, you know, and these champs just feel like they're stronger, just like engaged champs just feel good. I think a lot of the time it's easy to understand, oh, there's a hook. Okay, you land your hook, you kill them. It's easy. Versus, like, Janna and Soraka are kind of hard to understand what are they contributing? Why are they important? Like, it's not flashy. It's just a lot of stats a lot of the time. And really subtle things. But, yeah, you see, like, the Thresh, Nautilus, Leona, Pyke, Blitz. All of these are very, very popular champions. So, Janna's going to be really good against them because she's the queen of disengage. Especially now that, like, Tahm Kench has been nerfed. Then she's just going to be really good. And Janna is very unassuming. Just, like, hitting that tornado when someone's trying to hard engage on you. When, like, a Zac is trying to fly over a wall at you. Or Jarvan's trying to flag and drag on you. Or a Nautilus is trying to connect a hook on your AD carry. They're just, like, tons and tons of situations where this tornado is just a really big deal, and it doesn't seem like it is, but it really is. That little bit of disruption just makes it so hard. It just stuffs, like, so many dashes. If you're using it correctly, it can stuff Lee Sin, who's really popular. It can stuff things like Rengar trying to jump on your AD carry, Kha'Zix trying to jump on your AD carry. So that makes it surprisingly difficult to, like, kill her. It gives her a good amount of skill ceiling. Like, the best Jannas, you know, that's where they are a lot of times, is how well to use that tornado to stop movement. A lot of people think she's just like an AFK shielder. And she can do that and be, like, all right at lower elos, but, like, the Howling Gale usage is really, really important. So she has that, and she has her ultimate to also push people back. So if they manage to get through your Howling Gale, then you can push them back with Monsoon, too. Which completely, like, stuffs so many things. You know, the Rengar, the Kha'Zix, the Zac, anyone trying to jump on your AD carry is very good. Also heals for a ton. You know, AoE on everyone. It's even more than a Soraka heal. But you do have to channel it, and they have to stand in it the whole time. So, you know, it is a really big heal. At least at level, I think it's bigger than Soraka. It may not quite be if they're low. It doesn't have the same global reach that Soraka's does, and it's not instant. But it does push people back, which is very relevant in a lot of circumstances. They buffed her shield up fairly recently. So a 220 shield. Now, this is the thing a lot of people forget, is it gives out a ton of bonus AD. So anyone on your team that's getting crit, it's going to give them, like, a BF sword and some change. So it's just like, here, have 1,500 gold. When you put it on your AD carry, here, have a free 5 kills worth of gold. So that makes it very strong. It's good for pushing towers too, because obviously the AD is going to make the tower fall down faster, and then it can protect towers as well. So when someone's trying to push for that plate, they're greeding out for that plate, you can actually stuff them early on, and they might just get really greedy and overstay, take a tower shot or two trying to take it, or stay for another wave when they shouldn't. So there's a lot of really subtle stuff about Janna that can be good. It helps people kite backwards too to get away from divers like Mundo, like Olaf. People that are running towards Janna get that extra movement speed. So, yeah, she doesn't engage. You know, she's not going to put up the most damage. Like, a lot of her stuff is going to go really unnoticed. But she's just very, very good at disengaging, and especially if you have a competent AD carry, if you pair it together with like a good Jinx or a Jhin or something like that. I mean, Jhin, if you put this shield on somebody and give him like an extra, 50 or 60 AD, he's just gonna like blast people, off of one or two items when he lands his crit with his fourth shot. It'll just like one shot squishies in the mid game. So I think that makes it really good. She even has like a little bit of wave clear. It's kind of dangerous, depends on the matchup, but you can fully charge this Howling Gale. And just have it push through the minions. Doing 100 damage for 1 point in it can be pretty solid. So yeah, Janna's going to be very solid disengage. You got to be careful picking her into poke though. Sorry, I'll mute real quick. Didn't want y'all to hear me blow my nose. But she can get poked out early because she doesn't have a heal, and her shield is on a really long cooldown in the early games, 16 seconds. So if she's up against something like a Soraka or a Karma, who's going to be more popular on this patch, like that can be really, really rough early. But like if you're against a melee champ, a Nautilus or a Leona, and remember those are the most popular styles of champs right now, she's going to be very, very strong. So yeah, I think that she's definitely worth a mention. She's like probably one of the second, maybe the second or third highest scaling enchanter with that shield. But yeah, going to be really, really good. Nautilus still going to be strong, still hard engage. They did nerf his damage. 50 off of his ult at level 6 is quite a lot. He still has 4 different forms of CC, a point-click ultimate that can knock up multiple people for multiple seconds, a really fat hitbox on his hook. It's very difficult to miss it. AoE, damage in team fights with his E, wave clear. He still has a ton of stuff. So Nautilus is still a force. He's still very strong. He's still got like 52% win rate. That is down from like the 53 or 54 that he had at the end of last season, but he's still going to be a really good champ, and I think he's going to be the best if you're looking for something that's like the all-in hard engage. I think he's probably going to be your best option. And it's just going to be like the same. Well, I haven't really thought about, because I honestly haven't played Nautilus in the preseason that much. I played against him a ton. I guess you can still go for like Ghost Poro plus Ulti Hunter if you want to. He does have some like AP ratios on his Q. I mean, all of his stuff has AP ratios. Like, it's okay. It's not amazing on him. You could also, I guess if you wanted to, you could go for something like Magical Footwear. Just not a lot of good secondaries. I guess you could go for like Cosmic Insight Biscuits or Cosmic Insight Magical Footwear. Maybe. I guess maybe like Hex Flash, Cosmic Insight. The Hex Flash would allow you to like get some different angles to catch people off guard with your hook. And that's probably what the pros are doing. It's probably something like Hex Flash, Cosmic. Okay, Karma. Now this is where we're getting to one of the new champs here that's been updated. Now, I think this is really big, and I talked about this in my patch notes video. Be sure to check that out. A lot of people are sleeping on this. Freak just like glossed by it. He barely mentioned it for like 2 seconds. He's like, okay, she gets a little shield. That's good. This is not a little shield. Like, getting 30 extra shield when you buff this up is a really big deal. I think that's like 17% when I did the tier list video, or the patch notes video. It was like 17%. So, like, 17% bigger shield. So, if you look at just like a cost basis times 35 is what 17% plus healing and shielding would look like. It's like 600 gold value just on the house. And with Karma, you got to remember that, like, her base shield is really, really important because she can make it AoE with her ultimate. And that's something that a lot of people, are sleeping on. Even really analytical people that think about this a lot, like Freak, are probably sleeping on this, right? Because this baseline shield, this 200, gets a bonus shield added on top of it. At level 11, it's going to be 135. And then it spreads out even more. So it has a 100% AP ratio on it with a 135 on top of that. So that's 335. If you have 100 AP, that's like 435. Just call it 450. And then everyone else gets 30% of that shield. So that extra 30 actually ends up being 10 extra on everybody else in a fight. So that's pretty huge, you know. And the extra base also affects any plus healing and shielding that you have is now going to be even more effective than it was to begin with. So that 30 very quickly starts adding up. It also, you know, obviously scales with Revitalize. It's really, really good. Now, shields don't scale with Spirit Visage. That's really important. Those tanks that get Spirit Visage, the shielding does not get 30% more. I'm like 99% sure it does not. It's only healing. That's where Soraka would shine versus someone like Janna or Karma. But nevertheless, that's a big shield. Because here's how Karma works. She was really OP, like, in May, and that's when I hit Diamond. This season we were Diamond in May and June, and then we just kind of fell off the wagon with that hard engage meta. She's very, very good in the early game, and she still is. Like, that Q push is so strong. Like, it's very cheap early on. It does a lot of damage, up to 260, and it's AoE, so it hits everything, all the minions. So you can hard push. With Caitlyn, it's just a nightmare. You can just hit that back line with Qs, and then Caitlyn will just clear the wave instantly with her Q, or like Jinx with his grenades. And then you can just take shots at him under the tower. I mean, this empowered, like, Q when you hit him with it, it's a lot. So, like, that total burst, you know, at level 3, it's going to be, like, 150 damage. And if they step in the detonation, it's going to be close to, like, you know, almost 300 damage in the early game. It's going to be, like, you know, half of somebody's health. So that empowered Q hits like a truck. And just your ability to go through and just keep auto-attacking, queuing people, is just really strong. And it's very difficult to gank her because her E not only shields, but it gives extra movement speed as well. And then your focus resolve is actually pretty decent too for all ending because they can't dodge it. So if a jungler is like coming up, you just speed yourself up with the shield, and then just put your W on them, and they're gonna die. Right? It's a 1.4 root duration at level 1. And that's really good for baiting all ends as well. So she has a lot of protection for herself with shield, and then empowered W gives you back 40% of your total health. So she's got a lot of tricks up her sleeve. She's very impressive in the early game. She's the best poke champion. She's really good in this type of meta where it's push, get priority, get plates, or get scuttles. It's going to be really good. So I think she's going to be strong. The problem where she falls off is like later on, her shield was so small at 170 that like you just weren't scaling hard enough to keep up with a lot of the other enchanters. But like giving your whole team like a Shirelia's for free, basically with your Defiance, with a pretty like respectable shield, and giving them all like the Ardent Sensor buff with that is very, very strong, especially when you're talking about like what the meta champs are right now. You're thinking about Olaf, thinking about Garen, Darius, all of these champions that are just so scary if they can just stay in melee, if they just don't get kited. She's very, very good with that. So if you've, you know, if you're a league historian, if you've ever watched metas where Karma's been really good, this is the type of meta where she's been really good. It's just her raw numbers have been a little bit low. So that's why we haven't seen her as much. But this is going to be big, I think. I think it's going to bring her up at least 3%. I'd be surprised if she's not at least 52% in a couple of weeks. We'll see. I think this could be enough. If this stays like this, maybe, you know, into pro, you might see her. Because she is one of the few ranged champions that sometimes people play in a pro because she's so impressive in, like, push-poke metas with someone like a Caitlyn, Jin, or Ezreal. Those type of metas. Yeah, I think she's going to be good. So I'm going out on a limb. You know, putting her tier 1 might be a little ambitious at the bottom of tier 1, but, you know, maybe she should be tier 2. But I think she's going to make a splash. So with her, you do want to go all in on the poke. You know, you do want the Airy, Scorch, that type of stuff. But then I would just go Ghost Poro and Ulti Hunter. Just get that ulti down as low as you can on the cooldown, and then every single time you auto-attack or use your abilities, it lowers it by a flat amount. So if you can get her ulti down to like a, you know, a 20-second cooldown with a bunch of CDR, then all she has to do is just hit people with like a few spells, a couple auto attacks, and then this, you know, easily ends up being like a 10-15 second ult. So Ulti Hunter can be very, very strong on her. Yeah, I think she's gonna be really solid on this patch. So I would probably just level up with her, like maybe 3 points of Q in the laning phase, and then start maxing your E after that for the mid game team fights. Now, and I gotta head out here in a little bit, so we gotta hurry up here. Zyra is still going to be strong. She does have a lot of poke. She can be very impressive in the laning phase. You don't have the early mana regen off of Frostfang anymore. They did nerf her mana regen before. You don't have any mana in your items because you're going to be rushing Sork Boots and Oblivion Orb. So that can be a little rough if you're trying to harass. You might have to rent a Fairy Charm or two, which means you just buy it for 125 and then sell it back for 88. So you're losing 37 gold, but if that's what you need to do to keep the harassment up, then it's worth it. You know, if you can even deny like 2 minions in the laning phase with better harass because of Fairy Charm, the renting it, then it's probably worth it. So she's really good. She applies a lot of pressure. She does not have a good matchup at all against Karma. Karma outranges her. That's classically a really bad matchup for her, so don't pick her into Karma. But into something like a Janna, something that doesn't have a heal, early game it can be good. You can also buy into a Morellonomicon against Soraka, so that's pretty handy. Soraka still will outscale you later on, but having Morellonomicon certainly does help. So if you can dominate the early game, you know, bully out some weak picks. You know, if you have like Jin, Zyra into something like Kaisa, Janna, or Kaisa like Thresh or something like that, you can completely shatter them in the laning phase. So it's pretty good. She does take dragons really well too because her plants do a lot of damage and can tank early. So that's another perk. And she takes barons pretty well too. So she's very strong. Just the problem is she can get just outscaled by some of the enchanters if you don't slam the early game. But, you know, she's very good at slamming the early game. So try her out if you like. She does have a pretty good win rate right now. And she does have a higher base mana regen than something like a Brand or a Vel'Koz. So you do have that going for you. Senna is going to be knocked down a little bit of a peg. A lot of those nerfs weren't directly towards support Senna. Now, Freak misread this in the patch notes, at least as far as I can see in his patch notes. I just wanted to clarify. This says that 1.67 on Senna minion kills. That's only if you kill the minions as Senna. That means ADC Senna has her drop rate reduced. This does not affect support whatsoever. Okay, support is still going to get a 20% drop rate on the little minions, see? Small minions and monsters have a 20% chance to drop, okay? Reduced by 1.67 on those that Senna actually kills. So if you're not killing the minions very often as support Senna, then it's not going to affect your drop rate very much at all. It is going to affect ADC. We'll talk about that in the ADC tier list. Probably release that tomorrow. But it's not going to affect support Senna. Now, they did nerf her base damage by 10, and they did nerf the bonus attack damage by a decent chunk. Now, I don't like buying a lot of attack damage on her as support. I think it's really expensive. You have to snowball really hard. I like the Athene's build, which this does help that out a little bit with your R. But if you do go for the AD build, that's going to be a nerf on the ratio. The baseline damage is definitely a hit to your early game harass. And losing the 0.2 seconds off of your last embrace is actually quite significant as well early on. Now, you do max this out second, so it's really only going to matter for like maybe the first like 7 levels or so. After that, you're going to have a decent chunk kind of in that like 8 to 12 level range. You'll get back your full, or getting closer to your full duration. But and the base stats, whatever, I mean, it doesn't matter that much. You know, at level 10, you're going to be 100 health down. You know, it could matter, obviously, if you could have walked away with 100 health. It could matter, but I don't think it's that big of a deal for support Senna. I think she'll still be pretty good overall. You know, she's got really good poke, really good wave clear, like pretty decent CC. Like, chaining that together is still long enough for Caitlyn to put a trap under you and just one-shot you, or for Jen to hit you with the W. So, I still think she's really dirty with another, like, ADC that has, like, pretty good CC. She's going to be very strong, so I still think she'll be good. I think she'll be banned a lot. I do think that ADC Senna will still be pretty good too, but ADC Senna is definitely getting hit a little bit harder than support Senna, as she should, because she has like a 56 or 57% win rate as ADC. But anyways, that's the thing. And then the last thing that I'll talk about here, and then I got to hit the road. I will just say that like Blitzcrank is a good counter against enchanters if you want him. Sona is just kind of like a worse version of Soraka. But if you do want the teamfight presence with her ult, you've got like a Misfortune or something like that, you're going for a good teamfight comp with like Misfortune plus Amumu plus Sona or something like that, the classic Season 1 Wombo combo. You know, she can be good, but otherwise, she's going to be really starved for mana early on because of the Frostfang nerf. So I'd probably just go with Soraka in a lot of cases with that. And then kind of these lower tier, like Nautilus is just a much better Leona, I think. Just has more utility to him. Nami just doesn't have enough raw healing. She's only got 170. Her single target's just not enough. The utility is good, but I just think she gets outscaled. Lulu is very good if they have something like a Kog'Maw or a Twitch, potentially. Although I think the new Yuumi is going to compete with Lulu for that slot. Morgana is very good as a counter pick against Nautilus and Leona. Other matchups, not so great. If you're a god on Thresh, he can be good, but... And the same thing with Bard, but in general, for most like casual users that aren't one-tricks, I don't think they're going to be that great. Okay, let's talk about Yuumi here really quick. Just to kind of go out of order there, but we're running out of time, and I know people want to hear about Yuumi. I think ultimately this is going to be a buff for Yuumi, and I do think that she'll be tier 2 now instead of like gutter tier. She could be tier 1 off of this, but I think that already, even when she was god mode and like pro play, she really in solo queue never really got above like 45, 46% as far as I can remember. She's just really, really hard to play correctly. And so like the meme is like totally wrong, where you just like AFK, on somebody, go get a sandwich or something like that and win the game, that people were saying with Yuumi. It's not that. She's very dangerous. Usually you don't take flash on her. I know Jolty's going to say something in the comments, but that's just how it is, man. Most people don't take flash on her. Jolty's a longtime viewer, a great supporter of the channel, and he just swears up and down that you got to take flash on Yuumi. But most people don't take flash on her. Makes her very inherently dangerous if you ever get caught out. Hitting those Qs is actually kind of tricky, and just making decisions like jumping between people, knowing when to save people, when to give it up. It can be some pretty tricky decisions with her. So, anyways, they're giving her back her mana restore, and they're giving a boost to her shields. This is going to help her out with trading early on. Pretty nice shield later on. So it's more dangerous because the biggest change here is this W. If anyone ever CCs you, it disables your W for 5 seconds. I think even if you're not trying to channel and dash, it just straight up disables it. So if you're just like walking around and like Thresh hooks you out of a bush, you can't use your W for 5 seconds. So that's going to be really, really rough. You're going to have to be very, very careful with Yuumi, because if you get hooked, you're probably going to die. So that's kind of rough. But if you do land these things and you don't get CC'd, then you are getting pretty good rewards. Now, your stuff does cost more mana, but if you just get one trigger of bop and block every like 30 seconds or so, you're still going to be positive on mana. So as long as you're hopping off every now and then and auto-attacking, which you should be, excuse me, then your mana costs are still going to be very manageable. Not a problem. Now, the ability power here, you are losing 0.25 scaling, but you're getting 50 flat. So what that means is that if you have 200 AP or less, this is definitely a buff. If you have more than 200 AP, it is a nerf. So this is a buff for Yuumis that are getting traditional support items, that are getting like, Athene's, Ardent Sensor, Redemption, that type of stuff. It's a buff for that. It's a nerf if you're rushing like Luden's Death Cap, which was like one of the unhealthy like Garen Yuumi bot lane monstrosities that we saw some at Worlds. They're trying to get rid of that. Now they are nerfing the missile duration to 2 seconds, so you can't just like, throw it all around and still hope to hit them. You have to actually, home right in on them, and if they juke you, you're not going to hit it. So it is going to be harder to hit. And then it has a quarter-second channel time on you and me, so that's going to make it like a lot harder to dodge hooks. But in a lot of circumstances, if it's not like a hook coming immediately at your face, it probably shouldn't like matter too much. And you're giving out more adaptive damage, a little bit more flat, a little bit more scaling, and it's based on whoever you're attached to. So that means it's usually going to be much higher because other people are going to be stacking way more adaptive force than you. Now, this is particularly really, really good on things that get a lot of bonus attack damage. So like Senna and Jhin specifically, this is going to be really, really great. However, she does give out attack speed as part of her E, so that kind of makes it to where you want to play her on someone like a Jinx as well. So she can kind of go either way. But giving out 45% attack speed is an extra 1,000 gold worth of value. If you're giving out an extra, in a lot of situations, maybe 15 to 20 extra adaptive force in the mid game, which is pretty common. You get 7 flat, and then you get an extra 8%. So if they have like 100 adaptive force, the person you're attached to, that'd be 15 right there, easy. So, you know, 15 adaptive force is going to be like 300 gold value. This is like 1,000 gold value when you have this maxed out. So you're handing out like 1,500 to 2,000 gold probably in the mid game. And that's like comparable now to someone like Janna or someone like Lulu with their buffs. So that's really strong. You have a really high like single burst heal that's on an 8-second cooldown with a higher ability power. So that's really nice. It does cost an absurd amount of mana, but before you had to use 2 charges at 70 each, so that was 140 mana anyway, for unless the person was like at 1% health, probably less healing. So that's nice. And then it's a 3-second buff to movement speed that doesn't decay. So that's pretty good. Like, you can still get on the Garen or the Darius or whatever and run people down pretty well. Used to be able to get up to 4 seconds of movement speed if you use both charges. But anyways, I think this is going to be for just like casual Yuumi players, like non-pros. I think this is going to be stronger just because the base numbers are higher in a lot of scenarios, especially in the early game. So we'll see. I expect her to go up. You know, I think she could be tier 2. She's still not going to have a high win rate. You know, she might go up to like 47% off of this. She might get to 50. That's optimistic. But, you know, I think that... I think she'll definitely come off of like 40% off of this. You know, I could be wrong about that. Maybe tier 2's ambitious, but I think she definitely in some cases could have a role, because she still has a really good AoE ult, and just giving out the extra attack speed and the extra adaptive damage. Like I said, you know, that's a lot of gold. That's giving out like 5 or 6 kills worth of benefits to people off of your zoomies and W combo, in addition to having a really powerful team fight ult and having pretty good trading in lane with bop and block and prowling projectile. So we'll see. A lot more dangerous, but also a lot more powerful. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. And I'll see everybody next time. Have a great day.